please put your hands together for Mr. G.
This poem is called To the Birds.
Two red robins awoke early one morning, father and son sharing a moment of calling. In the magical hours between dewdrops and dawn, when all is calm with the world.
Said son to father, Dad, why do we sing? And puff up our chest and limber up our wings, when it seems to me to be a bird is but a lowly thing, when man is in charge of this world.
He builds a nest so high it makes love to the sky. He wears feathers in all shapes and all colors and sizes. His wings are invisible, yet he flies so high. So why should we sing in this world?
Said father to son, yeah, man indeed is strong. He walks as proud as a peacock and has the grace of a swan. He even goes a little cuckoo when the weather goes wrong, for he believes that he's in charge of this world.
He puts a feather in his cap and tries to rule the roost. But whenever he gets scared, he feels the bump of a goose. For we used to be dinosaurs, and that's the truth. And that's why we sing in this world.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mr. G, and I am a poet, or a spoken word artist, and a man who loves words. I'm a Londoner. I grew up in a big city, so I've never really known anything else. So I guess that London is very much a part of my fabric, my lifeblood, my force. The driving motivation behind my poetry is trying to answer questions that I have about life. I don't believe that a poem or a work of art or anything can really change someone's life, right? You are the person that changes your own life. All the poem does, or the work of art does, or the movie or the song does, all it does is that it just, I suppose, clears the vision for you to see the path upon which you can then change your own life. That's all I really want from my poetry. I just want it to be able to stimulate questions, stimulate thinking. As long as you're thinking, then the path will always be found at some point in time. I first heard about Prem Rawat when, believe it or not, I didn't know much about him, even up until meeting him. So I like the fact that here is a man that I'd never really heard of before. I'd never really experienced him other than just hearing a few quotes every now and then, who's been doing this for 50-something years, that he's still got the same vigor and self-determination and self-realization to keep pushing himself forward and forward and forward. He's on the path that he's on, and that's the path he set himself for his life.
Peace is not a luxury. Peace is a necessity.
And so when you see someone that seems to be so focused on pushing forward his idea of peace, that can be very inspirational.
What I'm talking about is just a simple peace coming from inside.
Even before we did the interview, Prem and I went to the Houses of Parliament, which is the seat of government in the United Kingdom, to speak about peace. You know, he went to speak about peace. I did a poem about peace.
It's difficult for us to imagine there's just one human race, but we like to cling on to our divisions and exhibit our hate. Maybe one day we'll listen to the wise men who say, we don't own a piece of Mother Earth. Mother Earth owns us, and everybody here is on a temporary stay. Thank you very much.
Meeting people like that, that's a very powerful thing to do. It's a very, very powerful statement to make. And I was glad to be invited to it, glad to be a part of it, and glad to experience the whole situation. So then when I was had the honor to be able to interview him, I wanted it to be a conversation where there's a free flowing of ideas. So I really wanted it to be a case where we felt free to just speak for the sake of speaking, and then wherever it goes, that's where it goes. The first time I met you was about a couple of weeks ago at the Houses of Parliament, where you were introducing a pledge for peace. I'd like to describe you, I suppose, as a peace ambassador, and I'm a poet, so this is a meeting of two P's from a different perspective, and I guess we both use words to, I suppose, explore ideas and put forward ideas. So I was kind of wondering, what does poetry mean to you?
Well, I think, whether you express it in words or somebody expresses it in some other form of art, the main driving force is really what comes from inside of you.
Yeah.
And whether it is expressed in poetry, whether it's expressed in a song, whether it's expressed in music, whether it's expressed in any other form, it really is what is at the core of it, and to understand that is the core of it hatred, or if the core of it the human dignity? Is the core of it search for peace? Is the core of it from understanding, or is the core from all the other stuff that we get involved in in this world? Which is what you could put it in a very simple way, that it's negative, but I don't think you can really define it so suddenly cut and dry that that's all it is. Because people are where they are and what they see and what they perceive. And when you understand that, for me, and I can say that I have talked to a lot of people about peace, and that if what you are saying isn't coming from that place where there is a respect for peace, but there is a fundamental understanding of what peace is, then of course what you're going to say is going to be a mishmash of things.
Right.
And that's just like reaching in the sky and hoping, you'd grab something nice.
But how many people do have a core, solidified understanding of anything? Right? Because I think that what I find interesting is, like, I find poetry and art interesting when it is exploring, because it's coming from a point of almost the inquisitive mind, as opposed to the mind that is putting forward, this is how it is. And the reason why I'm coming at from this approach is because I see the art form that I use, which is poetry, and the poets that I admire are poets that promote peace. But I see them as almost trying to correct a way of thinking that man goes down. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But there's a part of me that I can understand the way of thinking that man goes down, because as much as I can admire the beautiful, wonderful words which would push me towards peace, there is also a part of me that is attracted to the ideas that push you towards war. And I think that the battle of man, as he goes through his life, or she goes through her life from the cradle to the grave, is that wrangling between these two opposing forces. And in some cases, peace wins. In some cases, war wins. And it is almost this never-ending wrangling of the soul.
When you express your poetry, or I express what I have to express about peace, really all we're using is the medium of speech to evoke what's already there.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. Let me read something to you. This is, in fact, an email that was sent to me by a person who is in Atlanta, Georgia, Men's Transition Center. Now, here's a person, and this is what his observations are after going through peace education program.
Right.
Every day, we ignore the fact that we have the power to write our own story. Now, here's a person that I think if he stood at the wall of his prison and screamed this, nobody is going to listen to him. He sent it to me. Yeah. I find it profound because it evokes something inside of me.
Wow, yeah.
Every day, we ignore the fact that we have the power to write our own story. At some point, you give up that power. I am going to leave today with a more focused agenda to write my story day by day. Mm. When I read this, I found it very profound. For somebody to observe that we ignore the fact that we have the power to write our own story. And it's very interesting because, I have to agree with you that the common viewpoint out there is about this wrangling between peace and war, and sometimes the battles win and sometimes the peace wins. But what is the reality? The reality is that we have the power to write our own story. Of course, this means that we're going to have to be conscious about what we do,
Yeah.
not only as an individual, but as human race throughout the world. Is being unconscious so important to people that they will give up that power to write their own story, because the only way they can write their own story is if they were conscious of what they have been given, conscious of the fact that they're alive, to worship life. I mean, it makes complete sense. Life would worship life.
Life is all we got.
Life is all we've got. This is what makes us happen. If we didn't have that, what would we be?
Yeah.
Nothing. And so this is what we have to do through our poetry, through our words, is to evoke that sleeping giant inside each human being,
Right.
called the consciousness, called the understanding, that you are a human being. You get to write your own story. Write your own story. The story that is your own story does not need alphabet. It can be written with a pen that doesn't need ink on a paper that is made out of not wood pulp, but your heart. Your understanding becomes the ink of that pen. Your heart becomes the paper. And your understanding becomes the emotion that allows you to start writing. And who can read this? No one but you. What are you writing? Because, I say many times, if you take a field, a fertile field, and abandon it, something is going to grow. It just is. It's going to be weed. It's going to be all the bad stuff that you don't want, but it'll grow. Or you can change that. A little effort will be required, but you can plant wheat and wheat will grow and it'll feed you. All that will grow all by itself isn't going to feed you. But the stuff that you do with a little bit of effort, with a little bit of consciousness, will make a big difference in your life. That life doesn't have to be this fight between having peace and not having peace. Because, look, if you're thirsty, and somebody says to you, I've got 2 glasses for you. One is empty, one is full. Which one would you like?
You choose a full one.
Well, you don't have a choice, do you?
Yeah.
Because you understand that you have a thirst. Every human being also has a thirst for peace. And if we don't understand it, in the vacuum, something will grow and people will go, no, I love war. Well, excuse me, today things have changed. There used to be a day when if somebody wanted to fight, they had to be in the front. If it was a king, the king had to lead his army.
Yeah.
Well,
those days are long gone, man.
Yeah, but can you imagine if that's what the world leaders had to do, be in the front?
It'd be a great day.
I mean, they would
I'd buy a front row seat to that one, man.
Yeah, it'd be like, let's think about this. Let's talk it over. Maybe we don't have to do this. But it's like all of a sudden something becomes so convenient. It's convenient to be unconscious. It's convenient not to see. It's convenient to overlook. And we have to use every tool possible to evoke that want and the thirst for peace that is so innately in every single human being.
You're a very eloquent speaker. You're a very articulate man. And you speak in conference halls, in parks, in prisons. You speak all over the world to varying degrees of people. I wonder what words offer you solace? What words offer you peace? I mean, are there any authors that you particularly subscribe to? Are there any poets that you particularly find enjoyable? What allows Prem's mind to indulge in the beauty of art, of articulation?
Everything and everybody. I don't ever in my life want to come to a point where I say I know enough and I cannot learn. I learn from a little kid. And I saw this kid in India, and I had a particularly difficult time of a lot of responsibilities. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And so I'm traveling in a car, and the car comes to a halt, and I'm looking out the window, and I see this little kid, and he's got a bicycle rim, just a bicycle rim, and a stick. And he's making that bicycle, hitting it, making the bicycle rim go, and he's got the biggest smile on his face. And at that moment, that kid was teaching me something. And what the kid was saying to me, at least this is what I thought, when that kid held, in a way that kid held a little mirror towards me, without knowing it. Without knowing it, he held a little mirror towards me and he says, look at you and look at me.
And I know he'd rather be.
You know?
Yeah.
And I said, this kid in this moment has more wisdom than all of my wisdom put together. Because he's having fun. I'm not. I've got to change what's going on. And it was just a matter of saying, look, what's important is that I feel the joy inside of me. I need to feel good. I don't have to call it happiness. I don't have to call it this and that. I need to feel good, like he's feeling. He's not sitting in a car. Nobody knows his name. But in this moment, so many people might know my name, and I'm sitting in a car, and I've got my suit on, and I am this, and I am that, and I've just done this. But he's got a smile on his face, and I don't.
So did you go out and join him?
I did in a very different way. And see, this happened so many years ago, and I've never forgotten. And that kid is still driving his rim.
Yeah.
And he will. For the rest of my life, he will drive that rim, because when things get serious, I have to remember his face.
Right.
So this, learn. I mean, Kabir, he's wonderful poet. Rahim, they're from India, but they're wonderful poets. And Khalil Gibran, so, the world is full of mirrors. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, well, so you mentioned Kabir, you mentioned Gibran. Kabir was from India. Gibran was Lebanese.
Yes.
And I think we were speaking earlier in terms of there's a fascination in the West with the East. And then you were explaining how there's a fascination in the East with the West.
Yeah.
And when you were a child, you came over to England and you went over to America, and then you got, I suppose, you were caught up in the epicenter of the whole, I suppose, counterculture movement, whereby you got children from the 60s and the 70s who were trying to look for something beyond what they'd been taught in Sunday school, in the classrooms of America or the classrooms of England. And there's this yearning to look beyond that which they had been taught. What do you think that the East had to offer the West, and what do you think the West had to offer the East?
One thing I noticed, that if there was ever a syndrome of grass is greener on the other side of the hill, then that was the perfect example of it. For people living in the East, West had everything they wanted. And for people living in the West, East had everything they wanted. People were looking for substitute religions. People were looking for substitute cultures. So people were looking for, the West is no good. East has all this and it's ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And of course, the point of it is that people get caught in not seeing themselves, because there's nobody truly holding a mirror in front of them. And they need to see themselves. That the beauty that they want to see in the East, or the beauty that they want to see in the West, is really the beauty that is inside of them. the wholeness and the completeness. It's not in the fragmenting of the society. It's not in saying, well, they have more answers, or they have more technology, or they have this, or they have that. No. What you really want is to have that little smile that the kid with the rim had. And that smile will come when there is a happiness inside of you. And it'll come from inside of you. And this is what I tried to do. A lot of things were put upon me. And it's like, okay, you've come from the East, so we expect you to do this. And I was like, no, none of those things, they don't work for the East. Why would they work for you?
Right.
And now you look at India, I mean, my God, India is like, you can't even recognize India sometimes. It's like, am I in India? Everything is so modern. Everybody's wearing Western clothes and, oh, okay. This is what they want, that's fine. But they're still human beings. They still go through the dramas. They still go through the traumas. They still go through all the ups and downs in life. Because don't forget, a human being is a human being, whether you live in the East or you live in the West or you live on the North or you live in the South. It has nothing to do with it. And the mirror that what you're looking for is inside of you. Not in the East, not in the West. Not in the wealth, not in the poverty. Not on the top of a mountain, not at the bottom of the mountain, but in you, just in you, is that feeling that you want. Within you is the wisdom. Within you is the answers to your question. Within you is that beauty. Within you is that peace that you need to see. We have to understand that people are capable of changing.
I think the affinity that we had was a mutual respect for the exploration of ideas with regards to peace.
That's another inherent flaw within man, is that we aspire towards a degree of prestige. Just the idea that someone can say, I'm better than this person.
But you are important. See, that's the thing. You are a VIP. There's nobody like you on the face of this earth. You are more precious and more unique than anything that they think is unique.
Oh, thank you so much.
But that's everyone. And you don't know it.
I love that type of thinking that breaks through all the noise and the mesh of modern living